Who's going to save the Chicago Bears franchise? Let's talk about it.
And it's blocked! Oh my goodness, the Packers block it, and they're going to win!
Welcome back to Second City Sports Talk. I'm Wyatt Bohmeyer, the host as always, and let's get into this very intriguing topic. The Chicago Bears have a crucial head coaching hiring coming up, and well, there's quite the plentiful amount of candidates out there. So we're going to talk about it. I have some opinions on who I think would be a good coach and, well, who would be a horrific hire and coach for the Bears. So let's talk about it. Now, I want to start off talking about who I think would not be a good candidate for the Chicago Bears head coaching job. And if you look at the recent news, you hear Brian Flores' name quite out there a lot, and I think he would be a horrific head coaching hire. Now, we'll talk about the whole DC situation later, but Brian Flores, when he was with Miami, it was a very strange situation. They never made the playoffs under Brian Flores, and as well, it was a huge disaster with Tua, the quarterback. Now, there was just some disconnect between Tua and Brian Flores, and it really did not let Tua develop. So I feel like with the situation with Caleb Williams, it's not what you want to have a head coach who has had a history of not getting along well with young quarterbacks. I just feel like that's a disaster waiting to happen, especially after the season Caleb Williams has had. He's had horrible coaching so far in the NFL, and he really needs somebody there to connect with him and develop him. And I just think Brian Flores would not be that candidate. You look at his time in Miami, it's just the whole summary of it. He started off horribly. They get Tua and just does not go well. He can't connect with Tua, and when you have such a young quarterback that is in need of good coaching and a connection with a good coach, I just feel like Brian Flores would not be the option. And yes, he's a defensive-minded coach as well. I think that when you need to develop a young quarterback especially, you need to go with an offensive-minded head coach, and that's another reason why Brian Flores would not be a good option. Well, the next coach we're going to talk about is someone who is quite controversial, at least for Bears fans. It's a very divided opinion, and that is Cliff Kingsbury. Now, Kingsbury, this season, it's been great under Jayden Daniels, with Jayden Daniels. I mean, 11-plus wins, going for 12 wins this Sunday, and it's been a successful offense for him. And you go back to last year, too, the connection with Caleb Williams at USC as his offensive coordinator. This just seems like a candidate the Bears are going to look at heavily, and I just think that would be such a big mistake. And I think the whole pinnacle about Cliff Kingsbury is he is a pretty good offensive coordinator, but has not proven to be a good head coach. Now, you look at his time in Arizona, and I'll tell you what, it was not good. They lost one playoff game. They only played in one playoff game. That was, of course, in 2022, a season where they started 8-2, but would go on to lose 4 of their final 5 games, and I think that end of season in 2022 is just a summary of Cliff Kingsbury's NFL career. He's just struggled. His teams have collapsed in the second half of all of the seasons he's coached. You look at 2020 as well. That team started 6-3. They finished the season 8-8. Missed out on the playoffs to the John Wolford that got the Bears in the playoffs. Our only playoff appearance. And, well, looks to be a long time. And just with Cliff Kingsbury, it's just been second half collapses, his offensive scheme falling apart. You look at Kyler Murray, that's a pretty capable quarterback out there in Arizona, and things just never seem to work. So I just feel like, yes, Cliff Kingsbury is a great offensive mind. He's just not the best head coach, and for a team that really needs a head coach to step in there, I just think he's not the right hire. Yes, he might help Caleb Williams out offensively, but at the same time, he just has not proven he can do that well being the head coach of a football team. And for a team that is dying for that type of person to A, help Caleb Williams out, and B, really change the culture of a franchise, I just do not think Cliff Kingsbury is that option. As for who I think the Bears should take a look at, I'm going to give you 4 plausible options, and then we'll talk about the 5th later. The first one, it's quite obvious. It's Ben Johnson. I don't think there's much that needs to be said about Ben Johnson. 3 straight seasons of having a top 5 offense in Detroit. He's the guy. You watch him play. You look at the San Francisco game from last week, the trick plays, the near laterals, the stumble and touchdown pass against the Bears. You can't make this stuff up. He's such a creative mind. He's a superstar in the making. The Bears need to hire this man, and I don't think they will. think there's too much bad stigma around this franchise to do something that smart. We'll talk about that stigma at the end of this episode, but at the same time, he is the guy to hire. I don't know what else needs to be said. You look at the star power he has in Detroit: Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and that offensive line. But at the same time, when you're that smart and that knowledgeable about football, you're going to make things work. Now, the second option, I think, is a very under-the-radar pickup, and that would be Liam Cohen. Now, the Bears interviewed Liam Cohen last year for their offensive coordinator position, and they gave it to Shane Waldron, who was fired 8 weeks into the season. So, Liam Cohen, a little bit about him. He's in Tampa, first season as their offensive coordinator, and if you look at what he has done to Baker Mayfield, he's made him a 4,000-yard passer. This team is probably going to go to the playoffs based on what the Falcons did last week against the Commanders. And he's turned around that team. They're averaging around 30 points per game, a top 5 offense in the league, over 400 yards per game. This team has been turned around by Liam Cohen. I think it would be a great option to help Caleb Williams out. He doesn't have much experience besides being part of the Sean McVay tree. And look, that's a really good tree to be in. He doesn't have experience, like I said, which could be a bit of a red flag, but he has a great offensive mind, and he's done a lot with not a lot in Tampa Bay. So I feel like he would be a great option, probably the B option. You definitely take Ben Johnson over Liam Cohen, but at the same time, I think Liam Cohen would be a phenomenal option. The third potential option I have is another offensive mind, and that is Joe Brady. Now, Joe Brady is currently the offensive coordinator for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, and much like Liam Cohen, this is a top 5 offense. This team puts up 30 points per game. Josh Allen might win the MVP. Now, how much of that is Joe Brady? How much of that is Josh Allen? Probably mostly Josh Allen, but Joe Brady is still calling the plays. And this team has just been phenomenal under Joe Brady, a great offensive mind, someone that could come in like Liam Cohen or Ben Johnson and completely change the offensive scheme. I think he'd be a phenomenal pickup as well for the Bears. Now, the fourth option, it's Mike Vrabel. Now, with Vrabel, it's a bit different as he's a defensive-minded head coach. He also has experience, and he's the only coach I've listed so far in the good category with previous head coaching experience. Now, you look at Vrabel, he's had some success. I mean, 2019, they go with the postseason, they knock off the Patriots and end that dynasty. They're the 7th seed. They go on the road as well to Baltimore, win that game. They go to Kansas City and unfortunately lose in the AFC Championship game, but still, that's an impressive season. 2021, they're the 1 seed in the AFC. They don't go anywhere, but still, they're the 1 seed. 2018, their offensive coordinator is Matt LaFleur. 2019 through 20, they have Arthur Smith. There's some proven success there, especially on the offensive side. And you look at what he was able to do with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback, and you say, hey, he's done a lot with not a lot in a small market like Tennessee. He would be a great opportunity for the Bears. Yet, you have to pause and realize, yes, he's a defensive-minded head coach. His last few coordinator hires were not great in Tennessee. Just pump the brakes a bit. Yes, he would completely change the culture of the Chicago Bears, but when you're trying to develop a young quarterback like Caleb Williams, I don't necessarily know if that's the best option. So I would lead with some caution when looking at Mike Vrabel. Yes, if they hired him, I would not be upset, but if a guy like Ben Johnson or Liam Cohen was still on the board, I would probably be upset, which is why I have Vrabel as my 4th option as Bears head coach. Yes, he brings a lot of tangibles, a culture changer, a personality that would come into Halas Hall and fix things for better. But at the same time, when your young quarterback and Caleb Williams is the priority, I don't necessarily know if that's the best route to take when you have offensive-minded head coaches on the board. And the 5th option, it's the field. Now, the Bears need to hire one of these 4 candidates. Look, Johnson, Cohen, Brady, Vrabel, those are the only 4 the Bears should be talking to. These 4 candidates will come into Halas Hall, and I truly believe will make a big difference, especially on the offensive side. With Vrabel, you have a culture change. With the other 3, you can completely revamp the Chicago Bears offense with a young Caleb Williams centered around it. Now, of course, the Bears are not prone to making good decisions. You go back to 2013 where this all started, hiring Mark Trestman over Bruce Arians, then going to John Fox. then going to Matt Nagy, which at the time was a good hire, but that didn't work out. Then hiring Matt Eberflus, that went horribly wrong when you also had a candidate like Dan Quinn. And truly, the Bears are behind everyone else. You have 3 phenomenal head coaches in the North, and the Bears are at the bottom, as usual. Unfortunately, just with this franchise, you can't rely on them to do anything correctly, which really makes you really pessimistic. I, for one, am really pessimistic about this next head coaching hire. I just feel like they're going to make the mistake and hire Brian Flores. That's the rumor right now. Could still be Ben Johnson. There were rumors that they want to go after an offensive-minded guy. But right now, it just looks like it's going to be Brian Flores, which would be the single-handed, the biggest mistake this franchise has ever made. And they've made so many big mistakes. They have a chance here with Caleb Williams. This team is not that bad. I just feel like if you buff the trenches up, we'll talk about that later in the draft, this team can be really good. And your sole focus should be Caleb Williams. And bringing in a coach in Flores who has had disconnect in the past with young quarterbacks, I think would just be an indictment and a failure. And when this organization has been known for doing those two things, you really don't know what to do at the point. So, hey, those are my thoughts. Those 5 options right there. 2 or 3 horrible options the Bears could hire. And let me know what you think, because truly, I don't know. I'm really pessimistic about this. I think they're going to mess it up. Who knows? But hey, we'll be back in a bit. We'll probably talk some Cubs next time. You're watching Second City.